Hey guys, so today I'll be discussing about fastquant lesson 2. So if you were here in lesson 1, so in lesson 1 we focused more on how to get stock data and how do we plot that and how do we do basic analysis with a simple moving average crossover strategy. So for lesson 2 we're going to be focusing on how we can get that data and how we can not just simply analyze visually your trading strategies, but how do we empirically test their effectiveness? In other words, if we use that simple moving average crossover strategy, how much money would we have gained? So this is the question that we aim to answer with backtesting. So lesson 2, backtest your trading strategy with only 3 lines of code. Let's get started. So before I go straight to the backtesting part, just want to give some quick updates on the fastquant package. So number 1, get stock data has been added. You will previously have seen that it used to be a get PSE data function, but now it's called a get stock data function. And the reason is because it now includes all Yahoo Finance data on top of just PSE. And so if before you could search for a Philippine company like Jollibee, that will work. But if you want to search for a US company like Microsoft, that would also work. So the pool of companies in the database is now much wider. It has US coverage, probably a lot of Europe as well. You can check out Yahoo Finance if you want more information on that. So second update is we have the backtest function up and running. Super excited. And the focus of this discussion later is I'm going to be showing you guys how to use that. The third and last update is that for the GitHub repo, the above 2 updates should already be shown. So you're going to see that it's a lot cleaner now, and it's really focusing on the 2 features, which is accessing historical stock data and backtesting your trading strategies with only 3 lines of code. So here, show how you get stock data, and here, which we're going to discuss right now, is how do you backtest trading strategies. So let's begin. So for the next step, I just wanted to give a brief overview of how we do the setup. I know that in the last video, we showed how to do it in Google Colab straight, and that's great. You could actually get to the content of this tutorial straight from Google Colab as well. I have a link to the Google Colab in this video, so just go down there and if you want to see it. So that's for Google Colab. For the next way that you can set this up, you could actually use Jupyter Notebooks, and that's what I'm using now. And the reason why I want to be using Jupyter Notebooks is there are some cases where Google Colab has some limitations in terms of the plotting. So with Jupyter Notebook, we don't have the same issue. So I actually recommend that you use Jupyter Notebooks to run fastquant, especially for the backtesting function. Specifically for get stock data, there's really nothing there's no difference. But then for backtesting, I'll show you later how you could use the plotting. And for here, for under the Jupyter Notebooks, just 4 steps on how to get that started. So you can just install Jupyter, you just clone fastquant, and then you run your Jupyter Notebook. And then you can open the lesson at there's a directory for lessons and then fastquant lesson 2. So you'll see that over here in fastquant. You'll see that over here in lessons. This is where I'll be putting the lessons moving forward, and lesson 2 is right here. So you can get started with that if you want to open in Jupyter later. So okay, so that is the setup. Now let's just have a quick recap from lesson 1. From lesson 1, we got stock data. We use the stock data function now. As you can see, the arguments are just JFC, which is Jollibee, the start date, which is Jan 1, 2018, and Jan 1, 2019. So given that date range, we plot the closing prices, and this is how it looks. So if you run that, this is exactly how it looks. Just the same as we left it. And so what we did was we looked through this. Okay, you can see it's going up, it's going down, it's going up, going down. And then as the next level, what we did was a simple moving average trading strategy analysis. But an especially simple implementation of this. We did it assuming that the fast moving curve is the price itself. So you'll see it over here. So you'll see that blue is the closing price and orange is the simple moving average for 30 days. And remember, our discussion was that if you actually do SMAC, what you do is, assuming that the closing price is below the simple moving average, if it crosses over from below to go above, that means it's a buy signal. And if it goes from above to below, that is a sell signal. And so that's what we're doing here. We're just plotting this. And that's where we left off from the last lesson, right? And so today we'll be focusing on the next step. So now that we have a backtesting function, we can actually measure the extent that these strategies are working. So right now it's all visual, and that's great, but what's better if we have a more objective, numerical, quantitative way to know how well it's doing. So lesson 2, backtesting with fastquant in only 3 lines of code. Okay, let's get started. So the first step is our classic importation. So from fastquant, import backtest and get stock data. So backtest is the new one. See over here. And just fun fact, now the stock data is in a DCV format. So you'll see it's in, so it starts off with a date, the close, and the volume. We have actual volume data now. So simple as GFC, get stock data, just like earlier. The file's already been cached, so that's why you don't see a loading screen. So you'll see here that, okay, start DT, Jan 3, and then the ending DT is around December 28th. Of course, it doesn't have the 2019 Jan 1 because it's holiday, so we omit that. So now that we have the data, so that's the second step, right? So the third and last step is we could right away use the backtest function. So backtest a simple moving average crossover strategy on the JFC data. And so how the backtest function looks is over here. And as you can see, in this specific case, it has 4 arguments. So the first argument will be a new one. So this is the string that corresponds to the strategy that we care about. So in this case, we're starting with an SMAC strategy, so simple moving average crossover. And the alias in the backtesting function for the simple moving average is simply SMAC, which is the acronym, right? So that's the first thing. The alias of the strategy you want to choose. The second is the data that contains the date, closing price, and the volume data. So in that case, that's the variable GFC. So we use that as the second argument. The third argument is fast period equals 15. So if you remember earlier, we actually did an SMAC, but assuming that the fast period was 1. That's why we just looked at daily closing price. But in this case, we set the fast period to 15. Okay, so the fast period in the SMAC is the 15-day moving average, and the slow moving average is gonna have 35 days. So for the fast moving average, it's 15 days. For the slow moving average, it's 35 days. All right, so let's plot that. What's gonna happen? Okay, so that's simple. You saw that, it's like magic, right? Okay, why is it? Let's run that again. Okay, let's make this a bit bigger. Okay, maybe for now we can just zoom in. So what you can actually see, interestingly, is that if you do this strategy, you'll see the logs. So let's start with the very top before we look at the images. At the very top, you see what we would call, even before the global level arguments, is the starting portfolio value. So the default assumption is that you start out with 100,000, well in this case pesos, cash, but you can think of this in dollars depending on if you use Yahoo Finance data, since it's in USD. So you start with 100,000 pesos in this case, and since you're starting with 100,000 pesos, this is actually a variable that you can set up. So that there's what you would call global level arguments. So these are the arguments that you would keep relatively constant across trading strategies. So the variables there are init cash, so that's how much cash you start with, 100,000. The second is the buy prop. So buy prop just refers to the proportion of your cash that you use to purchase a stock in the case that there is a buy signal. So remember in our case previously, so if there's a crossover from below, that's a buy signal. So let's say you have 100,000 pesos in cash. So what you actually do is, if the proportion is 1, meaning like 100%, that means you use all your money to buy JFC or Jollibee. And so the default is really 100%, right? Just for simplicity. But you can set this later. We'll teach you how. Second is the sell prop. So sell prop is basically the same thing, but instead of buy proportion, it's the sell proportion. So in the case that, let's say you have 100,000 pesos worth of Jollibee stock, if there is a sell signal, which is the opposite, right? So in the case that the price crosses over from above, we would want to sell the stock. But how much of the stock do you want to sell? So it depends on your sell prop variable. So if it's 1, then it means you sell 100% of your stocks. So that's what happens. So those are your global level arguments. And then finally, you have your strategy level arguments. So these are the ones that are familiar from the backtest function. So we said fast period 15. So here you see fast period 15, slow period 35 for the slow moving average, right? And for the logs below, we can look at that more detail later. But essentially, it's showing the details of the transactions that are occurring through time. So remember, what's happening here is that we're simulating how the simple moving average crossover strategy with 15-day, 35-day moving averages would perform given that we apply it to data from Jan 1, 2018 to Jan 1, 2019. So this is how it would look. Weird. Must. There, perfect. Here we have there. So for some reason it's quite small. I'll fix that later. But okay, so what you should be seeing here now is that, what we expected. So we have the fast moving average, which is the 15-day. So you'll see SMA 15. So that means it's the fast moving average is the red line, and the slow moving average, which is SMA 35, it should be the blue line. You'll see over here that, okay, since the fast moving average is the red line, we should be looking out, first of all, the point at which it starts off below the blue line, but then crosses over to go above it. So you'll see that over here, towards this part, that's where that happens. And so what actually you'll see is that there's a green arrow, and that indicates that the algorithm purchased at that point. And so if you move a bit further, you'll see that if you move to the right, the red line crosses over from above. And so that simulates a sell signal. So remember, our buy prop and sell prop are 100%. So this means that it's simulating that Jollibee, we use 100,000 pesos to purchase Jollibee, all of it. And then at this sell signal, it means of our about 100,000 pesos worth of Jollibee, of course minus commission, we sell all that we have. And so we find this pattern again. So again, so the red line goes below, and then it crosses over again to go above, and that's a buy signal. That's why there's a green arrow. So what's happening is, there's a lot more stuff going, but that's it in summary. So what we want to be doing is looking at the final portfolio value here. You'll see that it's at 100,411. So what that means is that we started out at 100,000 and we essentially earned 411 pesos. Not a whole lot, but just like to show, okay, so now you know that historically, had you done the 1535 combination, this is how much you would have earned. So what's super powerful about this is that you can essentially just play around with the numbers. And so if you play around with the numbers, you can eventually find like which combination of like fast period and slow period would get you the highest value. And the same thing with buy prop and sell prop. Like, what if you made it like more of a you go with a more conservative approach where you do like, oh, what if I only buy with 5% of my cash, or like 50%, or like 70%, or like with a sale, like you do the same thing. Like, oh, what if you only sell like 70%, 50%? So that's something you can play around with. And so with the rest of the examples, I'm essentially just playing around with these parameters. Oh, wait, sorry. That no catch up. So here I'm just customizing the strategy parameters. So you'll see that with matplotlib, just making sure it's going to plot. But we can do is the same thing. So SMAC, JFC. But then I said the fast period is 1, just like our original, and then slow period 30. So this is the original thing that we visualized before. And what actually ends up happening is, okay. What ends up happening is that it's telling you to buy and sell like sporadically, and that, if you think about it, it's actually correct, right? Because since the price line is equal to the fast moving average line, it's essentially telling you to sell whenever it crosses over from above, and then buy whenever it crosses over from below. So this is why that's why we want to smoothen the fast moving average, otherwise this will happen. And unsurprisingly, you'll see that a lot of transactions occurred. We started at 100,000 cash, and then we ended with like a portfolio worth 64,000. So we essentially like lost 36,000 pesos in that case. which is obviously we don't want that. And then here we try out like a 30 example of, oh, what's happening here? Let's see if we can make that load a bit. Okay, there. Okay, now it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. It was embedding as a photo earlier. I'm not sure why. But okay, it should be a lot clearer now. So if we did a fast period of 30 and a slow period of 50, what ends up happening is that we purchase a lot less, and you'll see that the line is actually quite smooth in this case. And you'll see that at this point, and see it's actually indicating like which part of the year. So if you did this parameter combination, it would tell you essentially to purchase around August 2018, sell around October 2018, and then purchase again around mid-November 2018. And if you had done that, it's not as bad as the previous, but you still end up with just 83,900 pesos of your 100,000. So you still lost like 16,000 pesos in that case. Now if you go back, yeah, you'll see that we still ended up losing 16,000. So it is good, right? Obviously these aren't performing well, but it's important that you know that had we done these strategies like historically within the date range, this is how it would have performed. So just going down. Okay, but what if we made fast period 15 and slow period 40, right? So fast moving average of 15 days and slow moving average of 40 days. Still for the SMAC. So if you run that, you'll see that it's sort of similar, but just a bit off, different in timing. You'll still see that around August last year, last year we would have purchased and then sold and then purchased again. Let me just rerun that, make it easier. Yeah. So this is how it would look. It's part of the output. See August, and then sell. Oh, it's like now it's selling at late September, and now it's like buying at early November. That's the small difference, and that small difference actually ended up making us bring our cash position up from 100,000, moving into a portfolio value of 102,272.9. So for that 1 year period, what you would have ended up earning 2,000 pesos from your Jollibee stock. Which is not bad given like looking at this like chart, like it pretty much stayed flat, right? So okay, at this point, this is pretty much what you can do with the backtest function. So what's super cool here is you can apply it to essentially any stock that you want to choose. So remember, we chose essentially the stock that we wanted to use at the get stock data level. So you can apply this to any stock. Right now it's just JFC, but you can change it to PLDT, like you can change it to Microsoft, you can change it to Google, and you can choose your date range. And you can start playing around with, I really encourage you to start playing around specifically for SMAC, simple moving average crossover. You start playing around with like, oh, what if you change the fast period? What if you change the slow period? What if you change the buy prop to like 50% or whatever number? What if you change the sell prop? And see which ones work for you. Super excited to get feedback as well, like what's working for you, what's not, or if you want more features. So yeah. So just some relevant resources here. So, the fastquant package is right here. Super keen to get feedback from you guys. And on top of that, just wanted to add like a final section here where I give an outline of how to contribute more for the trading strategies. So on a high level, if you want to add trading strategies, you just check out fastquant/strategies.py. So I have that opened right here. So this is essentially showing you, if you want to add a strategy, this is the module that you want to be contributing to. But don't worry, because the way that I've structured it, I should clean this up more, but the way I've structured it is that if you want to add a new strategy, it's as simple as essentially like 20 lines of code in like a new class. Most of like the smart defaults is taken care of by this base strategy class. But then if you want to add new strategies, it's pretty much like quite short. So I'm actually willing to like work with anyone who wants to try this out. Like if you have a technical indicator that you want to add in, or I'll show you our inventory of like next technical indicators we want to add, and if you want to chip in, like super open to that. Right now, there are no tutorials yet on how to do this specifically, but I'd be glad to go on, like, to be hands-on helping people out if they wanna contribute. But really, the key is in knowing, like, number one, like how the base strategy works, and it's also with the familiarization of the backtrader framework. So for anyone who wants to contribute to the strategies and even like the data sources at a deeper level, it would pay to understand like how Backtrader works, because this is like the low-level API of what we're doing for fastquant. And remember, it's pretty low level, so a hello world for Backtrader is kind of like 35 lines of code. So that's what we're trying to like abstract away with the fastquant package. So yeah, so happy to walk you guys through that. If you're interested, just check it out. And this is just the initial list of technical analysis indicators that I'm planning to add in. Also already have some volunteers. Super thanks for all of that. And keen to get even more volunteers on, how do we bring it up to what I would call the Pareto strategies. So I did like some research and concluded that these are the 10 strategies that I feel we should be adding before we roll this package out to like more, I would say, like quant people. So yeah, so right now we only have 2. So you'll see it's like SMAC is done. That's what we're using now. In the next webinar, we'll be talking about RSI. So that's relative strength index. That's already in the library, so you can already be using that in case that you want to check out how the RSI works. But from there, we still have 7 more strategies we want to add. So if anyone wants to take that on, like super keen. But yeah, I plan to do it myself as well. Okay, so that's it. So lastly, I had some conversations with people who were also interested in applying machine learning based indicators. Super open to that, definitely. Like that is definitely part of the plan. Like I specifically am interested in adding like natural language processing or NLP based indicators based on what is like news, financial statement stuff. So although like my current strategy is to start out with just more fundamental technical analysis indicators and then move on to more like advanced like machine learning based indicators later. So but then like if you're an advanced data science person in finance and you want to go straight into contributing ML based indicators, I would super appreciate it as well. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And finally, just sneak peek for the next webinar, we'll be talking about lecture 3, the relative strength index. So essentially what we're doing now, but what if we do it for this new metric called RSI? So thank you very much.